The restaurant was glowing with golden light. Crystal chandeliers hung above long tables covered with white silk. Expensive perfume filled the air, mixing with the scent of roasted duck and red wine. Everyone looked rich, confident, and proud. But among them, a small boy stood quietly near the corner, holding a tray in his trembling hands. His name was Eli, and he was only 12. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was just helping his mother, who worked in the kitchen washing dishes. But that night, one of the waiters fell sick, and the manager shouted, "Boy, you, take the tray to table 7. So Eli obeyed. At table 7 sat Mr. Harrington, a famous millionaire, known for his loud laughter and sharp tongue. Everyone in the city respected him, or feared him. He had money, power, and pride. He liked to show everyone that he was smarter than the rest. That night, he was celebrating his business success with a few of his rich friends. They laughed loudly, drank wine, and didn't care who was listening. Eli approached slowly with a silver tray, trying to balance the glasses. He could feel their eyes on him, their fine suits, their shining watches, their fake smiles. He placed the glasses carefully on the table, bowed his head slightly, and turned to leave. But Mr. Harrington stopped him. "Hey, boy," he said in a loud voice that echoed across the hall. "Where are you from?" Eli froze. His heart beat faster. I'm from here, sir," he said softly. Harrington smirked. "You don't look like you're from here," he said, laughing while his friends chuckled. "Do you even understand English properly?" His tone was mocking, playful, but cruel. Eli stood still. He didn't answer. Then one of the guests said, "I heard some of these kids can speak Chinese." "Imagine that." Everyone laughed again. Mr. Harrington leaned forward, grinning. "Oh, really?" he said. "Tell you what, kid. I'll give you $1,000 if you can serve me in Chinese." The table exploded with laughter. They thought it was a joke. The women covered their mouths, smiling behind crystal glasses. Even the manager, standing far away, pretended not to hear. It was a moment of rich amusement for everyone. Everyone except Eli. He looked up slowly. His dark eyes reflected the chandelier's light. For the first time, he didn't look scared. There was something different, calm, deep, and knowing. He placed the tray down gently, and for a moment silence fell. "Sir," Eli said softly, "do you really want me to serve you in Chinese?" The room went quiet. Harrington raised an eyebrow. "Yes, that's what I said," he said, trying to sound bold again. "If you can, the money's yours." Eli nodded once. His lips moved, and what came next made the entire table freeze. He spoke fluently with a soft but perfect Chinese tone. The words were smooth, confident, and clear. It wasn't random, he was actually speaking. No one expected it. The laughter stopped. The rich guests blinked, confused. One of them whispered, "Did he just—" Harrington stared, his smile fading slowly. What did you just say?" he asked. Eli smiled politely and replied again, this time longer, flowing through the sentences as if he had lived his whole life speaking that language. His hands didn't shake anymore. His voice carried a quiet power, the kind that made even arrogant men listen. The other guests began to clap awkwardly, still shocked. Some smiled, others looked guilty. But Harrington didn't move. He looked as if someone had struck him with his own pride. How do you know Chinese?" he finally asked. Eli looked at him, eyes calm. "My father taught me," he said. "Before he died." The table fell silent again. No one laughed this time. Behind them, the waiters paused. Even the piano player stopped playing. Harrington leaned back, trying to hide his unease. "Your father must have been a smart man," he muttered. Eli nodded. "He was," he said. "He said languages can open doors that money never can." A few people exchanged glances. There was something in the boy's tone, and not pride, not anger, but quiet truth. Something human, deep, and honest. It made everyone in that grand room feel smaller. The manager hurried over, whispering nervously, "Eli, go help your mother in the kitchen." Eli bowed his head and turned to leave. But as he walked away, Harrington's voice stopped him again. "Wait." The boy turned around. Harrington looked at him differently now, not as a servant but as someone mysterious, someone he couldn't quite understand. "What else did your father teach you?" Harrington asked, almost curious. Eli paused, then said quietly, "He taught me that sometimes. People fight wars without weapons." The millionaire frowned. "Wars?" Eli nodded. "Yes, wars of words. Wars of respect. And then he walked away, leaving a silence so deep that even the laughter couldn't return. No one knew it yet, but that small moment, that quiet reply, was the start of something much bigger. Something that would shake the millionaire's heart, and the entire city with it. That night, the restaurant slowly emptied. The candles on the tables melted down to their last glow, and the sound of laughter faded into silence. But inside Mr. Harrington's mind, the boy's calm words still echoed. Wars of words. Wars of respect. He couldn't sleep. A small boy had spoken to him in perfect Chinese, the very language that had taken him years to study during his business trips to Beijing. But that wasn't what bothered him. It was the boy's confidence. His tone wasn't arrogant, but strong. It was the kind of strength Harrington hadn't seen in years. Not in businessmen. Not in politicians, not even in his own reflection. At midnight, as his car rolled through the empty streets, he finally asked his driver, "Find out who that boy is." The driver nodded silently. Harrington leaned back and looked at the city lights. He couldn't shake the image of those dark eyes that spoke of something deeper, something unbreakable. The next morning, Eli was back at the restaurant kitchen, scrubbing dishes beside his mother. Ruth, the kitchen was hot, loud, and smelled of old oil. Ruth looked tired but smiled every time she looked at her son. She didn't know what had happened last night. Eli hadn't told her. He just wanted things to stay normal. "Eli," she said softly, "you don't have to work so hard. You're still a child." Eli shook his head. "We need the money, Mama," he said. "And I don't mind helping." She smiled faintly and brushed the sweat from his forehead. "You're just like your father," she said. He never gave up either. At that moment, the manager stormed into the kitchen. "Eli, someone's here asking for you." Ruth turned quickly. "For him? Who?" The manager shrugged. "A man in a suit. Says he's from Mr. Harrington's office." Eli froze. Ruth's face changed. "What does he want with my son?" she asked sharply. The manager lifted his hands. "I don't know, ma'am. But he says the boss wants to see the boy this afternoon." Eli looked at his mother. "Maybe it's about what happened last night," he said quietly. Ruth frowned, worried. "What did happen last night?" Eli hesitated. "Nothing bad," he said. "He just asked me to speak Chinese." Ruth stared at him. "And you did?" He nodded. "Yes," she sighed deeply. "Oh, Eli," she whispered. "Sometimes showing people who you are makes them uncomfortable." He looked at her. "But Dad said hiding what you are is worse." Her eyes softened. She touched his shoulder and nodded slowly. "Then go, my son. Be brave." That afternoon, a black car stopped outside the small house where Eli and Ruth lived. The driver stepped out, holding a card. "Mr. Harrington would like to see the boy," he said politely. Ruth watched from the door as Eli climbed in. The car door shut with a soft click and her heart ached with worry. She didn't know that her son was about to step into something much larger than she could imagine. The car drove through the heart of the city. Tall glass towers, busy streets, and flashing billboards. Eli stared out the window. He had never seen this part of town before. Everything looked too clean, too quiet, too rich. Finally, they stopped in front of a huge building made of black glass. The name Harrington Global shone in silver letters above the doors. Inside, men and women in suits moved like machines, carrying tablets and talking into headsets. Eli followed the driver into a grand elevator that went up to the 40th floor. When the doors opened, he saw a large office filled with sunlight and books. Behind a massive desk sat Mr. Harrington, wearing a sharp gray suit. The millionaire looked up and smiled. "Ah, the boy genius," he said. "Come in, Eli." Eli stepped forward quietly. "You wanted to see me, sir?" "Yes," Harrington said, leaning back. "I want to know more about you." "Sit down." Eli sat. His hands were steady. His eyes calm. Harrington studied him. "You're not like other kids," he said. "You speak Chinese fluently." "Who taught you?" "My father," Eli replied. "And what did he do?" "He was a translator," the boy said softly. "He worked for a company in Beijing before he passed away." Harrington nodded slowly. "I see, so he taught you his language." Eli nodded. "He said it's more than a language. He said it's a bridge between hearts." Harrington chuckled lightly. "That's poetic. But tell me, Eli, do you know why I asked you to come?" Eli looked at him. "Because I spoke Chinese?" "Not just that," Harrington said, leaning forward. "Because you reminded me of something I lost long ago. Eli tilted his head. What did you lose? Harrington stared at the city skyline through the glass wall. Respect, he said quietly. For people who earn things, not buy them. The room fell silent. For a moment, the powerful man and the poor boy seemed equal. Two people from different worlds sharing the same space, the same truth. Then Harrington turned back to him. Eli, I want you to come to my office after school every day. I'll pay you well. You'll help me with something important. Eli blinked. Help you? With what? Harrington smiled faintly. I want you to teach me your father's kind of wisdom. The boy frowned slightly. I don't think I can teach that, sir. My father said people can only find it. Harrington laughed softly. Then maybe you can help me find it. Eli nodded. I'll try. As the boy left the office, Harrington watched him carefully. He didn't know it yet, but this small decision, bringing Eli into his life, would open doors that no amount of money could ever unlock. It would begin a new kind of war, not between nations but between hearts, pride, and truth. The next day, Eli walked into the tall glass building again. The guards recognized him now and let him in with a polite nod. He carried a small backpack and wore the same red shirt, freshly washed. It was still a little faded, but it looked clean and proud, just like him. Mr. Harrington's secretary, a woman named Clara, met him in the lobby. She smiled kindly. Mr. Harrington is waiting for you, Eli. Come with me. Eli followed her through long hallways filled with quiet workers typing fast and talking low. Everyone stared at him as he passed, a small boy in a sea of gray suits. When they entered the office, Mr. Harrington was already standing by the window. The city below looked endless, cars, buildings, and people moving like tiny dots. He turned when he heard the door. Good morning, Eli, he said. Ready to work? Yes, sir, Eli replied softly. Harrington gestured toward a desk with a tablet and papers. From now on, you'll help me with translations. I have letters from my Chinese partners. I want you to read and explain them. Eli nodded. He took the tablet and began reading. His eyes moved fast across the screen and he spoke clearly, translating each line with simple precision. His voice was calm, steady. It filled the quiet office like music. After a few minutes, Harrington smiled. You're even better than I expected. Eli looked up. Thank you, sir. But what caught Harrington off guard wasn't just Eli's skill. It was how the boy understood the meaning behind the words. When Eli explained something, he didn't just say what it meant. He said why it was written that way. What emotion was hidden behind the language. It was something no computer or translator could do. At lunchtime, Clara brought them sandwiches. Harrington asked Eli, why do you care so much about words? Eli smiled a little. Because words can change people, he said. They can build bridges or start wars. My father said a single word can make a man remember who he really is. Harrington leaned back, thoughtful. Your father sounds like a wise man. Eli nodded. He was. He said even the richest man becomes poor when he forgets respect. The room went quiet again. Harrington didn't reply, but those words stayed with him. Days passed. Eli came to the office every afternoon after school. He worked quietly, always polite, always focused. But slowly something strange began to happen in the building. The workers, who used to rush and whisper, started greeting him kindly. Clara began bringing him snacks. Even the strict accountant once smiled at him. Eli didn't do anything special. He just treated everyone with the same calm respect. But his presence changed the air. One day, while Eli was leaving, two businessmen near the elevator laughed behind his back. Look at that kid, one said. The boss is wasting time with him. What can a poor boy teach a millionaire? Eli heard them, but he didn't turn. He simply smiled faintly and said, maybe nothing, or maybe everything if he listens. The men stopped talking. One afternoon, Harrington invited Eli to join him in a meeting with his Chinese business partners via video call. It was a big moment. Men in suits sat around the long glass table waiting. The screen lit up, showing faces from Beijing. When the meeting started, the translator hired by the company struggled to keep up. The businessman spoke quickly, using idioms and tones that confused everyone. Harrington frowned, frustrated. Then he looked at Eli. Can you help? He asked quietly. Eli nodded and stepped forward. He spoke in clear, fluent Chinese, addressing the businessmen respectfully. The room fell silent as they realized how natural his words sounded, Not like a translation, but like real conversation. The men on the screen smiled. They began to laugh and speak more openly. Even the translator looked relieved. When the call ended, one of the Chinese businessmen said something that made everyone pause. Eli translated softly. He said, "You have a wise young teacher beside you. Protect him and you'll learn more than you think." The room was silent for a long time. Then everyone started clapping softly. Harrington looked at Eli. "You just saved my deal," he said. "You know what this means?" Eli shook his head. "It means you earned more than $1,000 today." Eli smiled politely. "Thank you, sir. But my father said money is only useful if it helps someone else." Harrington stared at him. "What do you mean?" Eli looked out the window. "If you earn money but forget people, it's like building a house without doors." For the first time in years, Harrington didn't know what to say. Those words, simple but deep, cut through all his pride. He suddenly remembered his own son, the one he hadn't spoken to in years after a bitter argument about business and family. That memory hurt. He turned away, pretending to look at his watch. "You can go home now, Eli," he said softly. Eli nodded. "Goodbye, sir." As the boy left, Harrington stood in silence. Something was changing inside him, something he couldn't stop. It wasn't about business anymore. It was about himself. That night he sat alone in his mansion, staring at an old photograph of his son. Dust covered the frame. For the first time, he realized how far money had taken him from the things that truly mattered. And somewhere in the city, Eli sat beside his mother, eating soup quietly. He didn't know it yet, but his simple kindness was slowly starting a war inside the millionaire's heart. A war between pride and humanity. The real war his father once spoke of. The next morning, the sky over the city was gray. A thin fog covered the streets and the air felt heavy. Mr. Harrington sat in his car, looking out the window as he thought about the boy's words again. If you earn money but forget people, it's like building a house without doors. He couldn't forget that. No business meeting, no phone call could clear his mind. Something had shifted deep inside him, something he didn't understand yet. When he reached his office, Eli was already there, sitting quietly with a notebook. He had drawn a bridge across two rivers, one side filled with tall buildings, the other side with small houses. Harrington noticed it and smiled faintly. "Interesting drawing," he said. "What does it mean?" Eli looked up. "It's about people, sir. One side has power, the other has peace. A bridge keeps them together." Harrington nodded slowly. "Your father must have been a good teacher." Eli smiled. "He was." He said, "Even the strongest bridge breaks if people forget to walk across it." The words struck Harrington again, gentle but powerful. The boy spoke like someone far older than his age. "Eli," he said softly, "what really happened to your father?" Eli's smile faded. He looked down for a moment before answering. "He worked for a company that went bankrupt, sir. It was a big deal between an American and Chinese firm. Something went wrong. My father was blamed for it, even though he tried to fix it." Harrington frowned. "Do you know the name of the company?" Eli nodded. "It was called Harrington Global Trade." The air in the room froze. For a moment, Harrington's heart stopped. He looked at the boy in shock. "What did you say?" Eli repeated quietly. "My father worked for Harrington Global Trade." Harrington felt cold. That was his company and his own company years ago before he sold that division. He remembered the crisis, the blame, the scandal, but he never knew the details. He had left everything to his managers to handle it. He remembered the name now, Daniel Cole, a translator who had disappeared after being accused of leaking trade secrets. The company fired him to save face, and Harrington never checked if the man was truly guilty. Now that man's son was sitting in front of him. Eli didn't know. He continued speaking softly. "My father said he wasn't angry at anyone. He said truth always finds its way home. But after he lost his job, he got sick. Mama took care of him until he couldn't fight anymore." Harrington's throat felt tight. He looked away, unable to meet the boy's eyes. He whispered, "Eli, your father's name, was it Daniel?" Eli looked surprised. "Yes, sir." "How do you know?" Harrington leaned back, covering his face with his hand. His voice trembled slightly. "Because I was the man who owned that company." Eli froze. For a long moment he didn't move. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. My father worked for you? Eli asked quietly. Yes, Harrington said. And I failed him. Eli stared at him, unsure what to say. Harrington continued, his voice heavy with guilt. I didn't know what happened. I trusted the wrong people. When the scandal began, my managers blamed your father to protect themselves. I should have checked the truth. I didn't. I let them destroy his name. He sighed deeply and looked at the boy. I'm sorry, Eli. The boy said nothing. His eyes were filled with quiet sadness, but not anger. After a long pause, he finally spoke. My father said the truth would always speak louder than lies. Maybe this is what he meant. Harrington nodded slowly. Your father was an honorable man. I wish I had known that before it was too late. Eli looked out the window. He forgave you a long time ago, sir. He said people who chase money too long forget how to breathe. Harrington felt tears in his eyes for the first time in years. He turned away, hiding his face. He was right. That night, Harrington didn't go home. He sat alone in his office, staring at the city lights. The world outside looked beautiful but cold. He remembered the times he used to walk with his own son, Michael, before money took over his life. He had built towers, companies, and empires, but not relationships. Not love. He picked up the phone and called his son's number, but it went straight to voicemail. He hung up slowly and whispered, I'm sorry. The next morning when Eli arrived, Harrington looked tired but different. There was a light in his eyes, not the light of wealth, but of awakening. Eli, he said quietly, I want to make things right. Eli tilted his head. How? Harrington smiled faintly. Your father's name was never cleared. I want to change that. I'll find the truth and make it public. People will know who he really was? Eli looked surprised. You would do that? Yes, Harrington said. It's the least I can do. Eli's eyes softened. Thank you, sir. Harrington nodded. No, thank you. You reminded me what it means to be human. They stood there for a moment, and a poor boy and a rich man, both silent, both changed. That evening, as Harrington looked through his old files, he found documents from that scandal years ago. He began reading every page, every name. One file caught his attention. It contained evidence that Daniel Cole had actually tried to protect the company from a data theft, not cause it. A note at the end said, Report ignored. Flame redirected. Harrington closed his eyes. The guilt crushed him. He whispered, I destroyed a good man to save myself. He picked up his phone and called his lawyer. I want a public apology prepared, he said firmly, and a full investigation reopened under my name. It was late at night when he finally leaned back in his chair, exhausted but free. For the first time in decades, his heart felt clean, but outside his window a storm began to form, dark clouds rolling over the city. Because not everyone wanted the truth to come out, someone somewhere was watching. Someone who had buried that lie long ago and didn't want it uncovered now. The morning sky was dark when Mr. Harrington reached his office. A storm had passed in the night and rain still tapped against the tall glass windows. The city below looked washed and clean, but his heart felt heavy. He had spent all night reading old files, and what he found changed everything. The truth about Daniel Cole, Eli's father, was buried under lies. Someone had destroyed an innocent man's name to protect their own. As soon as he entered, Clara rushed to him. Sir, she said nervously, people from the board are here. They said it's urgent, Harrington frowned. The board? Why now? They know you reopened the old investigation, she whispered. And they're not happy. He took a deep breath and walked toward the meeting room. Inside, 7 men and women sat around a large round table, their faces cold and serious. These were his partners, people who had built the company with him. The oldest man, Mr. Grant, spoke first. Harrington, what are you doing? Digging up a 20-year-old case will destroy our company's image. Harrington looked at him calmly. The company's image doesn't matter if it's built on lies. Another man leaned forward. This Daniel Cole case is over. The man's gone. Let it rest, Harrington's voice was firm. That man was innocent. And we ruined him. Silence filled the room. Then Mr. Grant's eyes narrowed. You don't know what you're talking about. The documents were clear. No, Harrington said, dropping a file on the table. They were forged. I checked the signatures. Someone faked them to frame him. The room buzzed with whispers. The board members exchanged nervous glances. Grant slammed his hand on the table. "Stop this madness, Harrington. You're risking everything for a boy's story." Harrington's eyes hardened. "No," he said quietly. "I'm doing it because it's true." Later that day, Eli entered the office. He saw Harrington sitting behind his desk looking tired but strong. "Are you all right, sir?" he asked softly. Harrington looked up and smiled faintly. "I've started a war, Eli. A different kind of war. But this time it's the right one." Eli nodded slowly. "My father used to say the truth is like the sun. You can cover it for a while, but you can't stop it from rising." Harrington smiled. "Your father was right." Just then Clara rushed in again. "Sir, someone leaked the story to the media. Reporters are calling nonstop." "What?" Harrington asked sharply. "They're saying you're reopening old scandals to distract from tax reports. Someone's trying to turn this against you." Eli frowned. "Who would do that?" Harrington stood up. "The same people who buried the truth before." He walked to the window and stared at the rain. "They're afraid of losing their power, Eli, and power doesn't let go easily." That night, as Harrington drove home, a black car followed him through the wet streets. Its headlights stayed far behind but always visible. He noticed it in the mirror and frowned. When he turned left, it turned too. He finally stopped near a small bridge. The car behind him slowed but didn't pass. The driver's window rolled down just enough for Harrington to see a face. Mr. Grant. Grant shouted through the rain, "Stop this nonsense, Harrington." "You'll regret it." Harrington stepped out of his car, rain soaking his coat. "I already regret enough," he said. "But not this," Grant shook his head. "You'll lose everything." Harrington smiled sadly. "Then maybe I'll finally have something real." Grant's car sped off into the darkness. The next morning, Eli came to work early and found the police in the lobby. He ran upstairs to see Harrington sitting calmly at his desk as officers walked around collecting files. Clara stood near him looking scared. "Sir, what's happening?" Eli asked. Harrington looked at him and said quietly, "They're trying to stop the investigation. They say I broke corporate law by exposing old documents." Eli's heart sank. "But you did nothing wrong." Harrington smiled weakly. "Sometimes doing right feels wrong to the world." Eli clenched his fists. "What will you do now?" "Fight," Harrington said simply. "The only way I know how, and with truth." He opened his laptop and handed Eli a small drive. "This contains all the files, the real ones. If anything happens to me, you take this to the media." "Promise me." Eli hesitated. "Sir?" "Promise me," Harrington repeated firmly. Eli nodded. "I promise." At that moment, 2 men from the board entered the room with cold smiles. "Harrington," one said, "you're suspended until further notice." "The board has voted," Clara gasped. "You can't do that." But Harrington only smiled. "Let them," he said quietly. "I've already told the truth." They escorted him out of the building as the employees watched in silence. Some whispered, others looked down, but Eli stood tall. Holding the small drive tightly in his hand, he didn't cry. He just whispered to himself, "My father was right. Wars without weapons." That evening, Eli walked home in the rain, the small drive hidden in his pocket. His mother, Ruth, waited by the door, worried. "Eli, you're late." "What happened?" He looked at her. "They took Mr. Harrington's job." Ruth sighed sadly. "People don't like truth, son. It makes them afraid." Eli nodded. "But truth doesn't die." He went to his small desk and opened the drive. The files glowed on the screen. Names, dates, reports, everything that proved his father was innocent. He stared at them for a long moment, then whispered, "I'll finish what he started." At that moment, thunder roared outside, shaking the windows. The war his father had spoken of, the war of words, respect, and truth, and had begun again. But this time Eli wasn't alone. He had a new ally, a millionaire who had lost everything yet finally found his soul. Rain poured down over the city that night, washing the streets like tears. The lights of tall buildings shimmered in the puddles. Inside a small apartment, Eli sat by the window watching the rain fall. The small flash drive lay on the table beside him, the proof of truth, the final key to his father's name. He could hear his mother moving quietly in the kitchen. She didn't ask questions anymore. She trusted her son's silence. Eli whispered softly, "Dad, I'll make sure they remember you." The next morning, he walked toward the city center with the flash drive in his pocket. His heart beat fast, but his steps were steady. Mr. Harrington had told him once, courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right even when you are. Outside the building of Harrington Global, news vans and reporters were already waiting. The leaked scandal had exploded overnight. Some people said Harrington was a criminal. Others said he was a hero. When Eli arrived, cameras turned toward him. A reporter recognized him from the earlier story and asked, "Aren't you the boy who worked with Mr. Harrington? Do you know where he is?" Eli nodded calmly. "He's coming," the crowd murmured. Just then, a black car stopped near the steps. The door opened and Harrington stepped out. He looked tired, older, but there was light in his eyes, the kind that comes only when a man stops hiding. He walked up the stairs beside Eli, ignoring the flashing cameras. Together they entered the press hall. Inside, microphones lined the front desk. The hall was filled with reporters, lawyers, and even the board members who had betrayed him. Harrington stood in front of everyone. His voice was calm, strong, and clear. 20 years ago, he began, a man named Daniel Cole was blamed for a crime he didn't commit. He was accused of betraying my company. We fired him. We shamed him. And we never asked for the truth. He paused and looked at Eli. That man's son is standing beside me now. His name is Eli. Whispers filled the room. The cameras clicked rapidly. Eli stood tall, his small hands holding the flash drive. Harrington continued. Daniel Cole was innocent. He tried to protect this company from a theft, and the people who blamed him were the real thieves. He turned to Eli. "Show them, son." Eli stepped forward and connected the flash drive to the screen. Files appeared. Reports, signatures, old messages, all showing the truth. The names of the guilty men flashed across the big screen. When Mr. Grant's name appeared, gasps filled the hall. Grant stood up angrily. "This is fake. You can't prove—" But before he could finish, one of the reporters shouted, "We verified these files this morning. They're real." Cameras turned toward him. Flashlights blinked like lightning. The truth had finally spoken. Grant's face went pale. Security guards stepped forward. Harrington didn't look at him. He only said quietly, "You built walls with lies. It's time they fall." The room erupted with noise, reporters shouting questions, people cheering, some crying. Ruth, standing in the crowd, covered her mouth in tears as she watched her son and the man who once destroyed her husband's name now bring him justice. Harrington turned to Eli. "Your father would be proud." Eli smiled softly. "He'd be proud of you too, sir. You chose truth." Days later, news spread across the country. Every headline carried the same story. Millionaire exposes corporate scandal. Clears innocent man's name after 20 years. Harrington resigned from his position, donating a large part of his fortune to education programs for poor children. He said it was in memory of a man named Daniel Cole, the man who taught him respect without ever meeting him again. Eli and his mother were invited to a ceremony where Daniel Cole's name was officially cleared. The government gave them an apology, but what meant more to Eli was the peace in his mother's eyes. After the ceremony, Harrington approached them quietly. "Eli," he said, "I'm leaving the city. I've got work to do, the kind that builds bridges, not towers." Eli nodded. "Like my father said." Harrington smiled. "Exactly. Maybe one day you'll join me." Eli smiled back. "Maybe one day I will." They shook hands, not as a rich man and a poor boy, but as equals, bound by truth and respect. That evening, Eli sat again by the same window where it all began. The sunset painted the sky gold. He opened his notebook and began to write. "My father once said people fight wars without weapons. Wars of pride, of lies, and of silence. But when truth speaks, even the loudest lie falls quiet." He looked up at the sky and whispered, "We won, Dad, outside." The city lights flickered like stars, and somewhere far away, thunder rolled, not a storm of fear, but a promise of change. The war without weapons was over, and this time humanity had won.